I was getting the foot bath ready for Calvin, just like always, and was about to take off his socks. The beautiful Omega pursed his lips and announced, "Let's get a divorce. Alan's coming back." My mind went blank. Alan had run out on their wedding for the sake of his family's business interests. Calvin was forced to marry me, a deaf man, in his place. For 5 years of marriage, I treated him like he was made of glass. But all it took was one "I'm sorry" from Alan, sent from across the Atlantic, to win him back. A wave of exhaustion washed over me. I signed the divorce papers and didn't look back. Later, Calvin would corner me, his eyes red, baring the pale skin of his back and demanding I rebond with him. "If you walk out that door, I'll marry Alan tomorrow." I just smiled brightly. "Well then, allow me to be the first to wish you a happy wedding." I didn't hesitate. I signed my name on the divorce papers. If we were splitting up, there was no point in continuing to fulfill my husbandly duties. I handed Calvin the packet of herbs I was holding. He paused for a second, then took it. It was a remedy I'd gotten from a doctor for his insomnia. A 15-minute foot soak every day had already improved his sleep tremendously. From now on, I guessed that job would fall to my dear brother. I went to the bedroom to pack. It was already 10 at night. I couldn't just let an Omega like Calvin wander the streets. It made more sense for me to be the one to go. I opened the closet, and it was stuffed with beautiful clothes I'd bought for him. They were all such bright colors, but looking at them made it hard to breathe. I quickly gathered my own few shirts and suits and put them in my suitcase. Calvin suddenly walked in, wringing his hands. His crimson lips parted, then closed again. He looked like he was struggling to say something. My heart started to pound. If he apologized right now, if he pouted like he used to, a little hurt, a little flirty, and said, "Honey, you're not allowed to be mad at me," then I would do exactly what I had done every single time before. I'd forgive him. Just as that tiny sliver of hope rose in my heart, Calvin bit his lip and spoke. Could you come with me to the hospital tomorrow to have the permanent bond removed?" I asked the doctor. "They said they need your signature." My face must have gone pale. If I could have, I would have ripped out my hearing aids. Just to escape this world. Calvin said nothing more. The silence in the room was so complete you could hear a pin drop. After a long moment, I nodded. "Fine, I'll go with you." With that, I grabbed my suitcase and walked out the door. Calvin yelled after me, "Leo, just give me some time." Alan's return was so sudden. My head is a mess. So sudden? But for all these years, haven't you two sent each other gifts every Valentine's Day? I found a random hotel and checked in. Couldn't sleep. As dawn was breaking, I lit a cigarette. I stood on the balcony and watched the sunrise. The first person to realize I liked Calvin was Alan. When we were little, my parents didn't want to send me to a special school. But they also didn't want me to embarrass them at a normal one. During all those years of being homeschooled, alone, my only playmate was Alan, who was 2 years younger than me. And later, Calvin, who was always chasing after him. Everyone just assumed I was the defective, neglected one. If my mother had known she was pregnant with a disabled child, I never would have had the chance to open my eyes. While Alan was being whisked around the world on tours, I was stuck in my bedroom, staring at a blank wall. I didn't get to attend a normal school until high school. One ordinary afternoon, Calvin knocked on my bedroom door. He asked, cheeks puffed out, "Alan won't play house with me. Do you want to?" And so, for the first time in my life, I sat on a bed with someone my own age. We played parents to a pair of dolls. When Calvin patiently dressed a doll in a pretty outfit and asked me if it looked good, looking into his bright, dark eyes, I blushed. "It looks great." The first time Calvin confessed his feelings to Alan, he was rejected. I fished the matching couple's bracelets out of the trash and hid them in my pillow. The water bottle Alan didn't want, I tucked into my desk. The trip Alan bailed on, I had already filled 3 pages with plans. Life kept moving forward, but the same scenes played out over and over. When Calvin found out Alan had thrown away the bracelet he'd made by hand, he flew into a rage and swore he'd never speak to him again. Then Alan won him back with a bubble tea. 5 years ago, The jilted boy at the altar, eyes red, swore he would never forgive that bastard Alan for the rest of his life. Now, all it took was one "I'm sorry" from across the Atlantic to win him back. I thought to myself, all those times I gave in, all those times I believed him, I was a damn fool. I brought all of this on myself. The smell of antiseptic in the hospital was nauseating. The doctor pushed up his glasses, his face serious. Removing a bond causes irreversible damage to the body. You two really need to think this through. Calvin's lips turned a little pale at the doctor's words. But he still signed the surgical consent form. I signed right after him. Calvin didn't care about his own body. I had no right to care for him. Before being wheeled into the operating room, Calvin grabbed my hand and forced a weak, pitiful smile. "Leo, I'm a little scared. You'll stay with me, right?" He had always been vain, loving colorful makeup. Today, for the surgery, he was bare-faced. I looked at his clean, sweet face and slowly pulled my hand away. I shook my head and said, "Seriously, what's there to be afraid of? Calvin, after today you'll be free." Calvin looked anxious. But before he could say anything, the doctor wheeled him away. I took one last look at the operating room door. Then I sent Alan the location. "Be here in half an hour to pick him up." Putting my phone down, I felt a surreal sense of dislocation. The last time I had actively arranged for Alan to come find Calvin was back when we were in college. They'd had another one of their fights, and Calvin dragged me to a bar to blow off steam. He got drunk and was draped over my back, uncharacteristically well behaved. If I turned my head, I could see his curled eyelashes. I was staring, mesmerized, when Calvin's eyes suddenly fluttered open. The next second, he smiled and planted a kiss on my cheek. "Alan, I knew you'd come for me." I smiled and nodded, then called Alan. In the middle of the night on a city street, I settled Calvin into the passenger seat, covering him with a blanket. I turned around, and there was Alan, hand resting on the steering wheel of his sports car, a smirk on his face. "Bro, don't fall for Calvin. You know you can't compete with me. Not for the company and not for an Omega." He wasn't wrong. At 22, Leo lowered his head in silence. 31, Leo was utterly defeated. While Calvin was away, I went back to his place to pack up the rest of my things. The matching couple's mugs were still on the table. Next to the floor-to-ceiling window leaned our enormous wedding photo. The cat padded over and rubbed against my leg. I was leaving. I didn't know who would feed her now. Calvin liked cats but was forgetful and impatient. Alan would probably just toss her out. My eyes suddenly burned. I couldn't stop a flicker of resentment from rising toward the Omega still lying in a hospital bed. It was a small feeling, mixed in with the pain, but impossible to ignore. I rarely got sick over the years, but there was one time I had a fever. Calvin had been terrified, standing guard by my bed like it was a national emergency, clumsily changing the towel on my forehead. He had custom hearing aids made for me with little cat ears on them. He had a terrible temper. He'd say awful things when he was mad, and he'd twist your arm until it hurt. But after a fight, he would always be the one to back down. He'd feed me cookies he baked himself that were sickeningly sweet. He'd give me incredibly ugly hand-knit scarves. He was afraid of pain but couldn't sit still. Every time I made him cry at night, he'd kick me in the shin. "Leo, get out." But if I actually turned off the light, he'd just cling to me again. "Honey, hold me." The love and the pain he gave me were never separate. It made me think I was some kind of masochist. A soft chuckle echoed in the empty room, followed by an even deeper silence. In reality, all that stuff I thought was proof of our love. It was just a beautiful dream I'd had all by myself. Kids who've never been loved tend to daydream a lot. Turns out, adults are the same. Didn't he say he was grateful to me? Didn't he say he would try to fall in love with me? Maybe Calvin did try. He just didn't succeed. And I can't blame him for that. I took my half of all our couple's items. Only a men's diamond ring was left, sitting quietly on the coffee table. Born into a silent world, I could only experience it through my eyes. And with those overly sensitive eyes, I had watched Calvin for half my life. Now I was finally giving him his freedom back. and getting mine back too. My parents found out Alan had returned to the country. They called me immediately to give me instructions. Talk some sense into your brother. Tell him it's time to settle down. He shouldn't be running around out there. He's been alone all these years with no one to take care of him. I hadn't spoken to them in months. Thanks to Alan, my parents finally remembered they had another son. But I didn't understand. Why does a man who's almost 30 need to be taken care of? Alan isn't disabled. He's been exceptional in every way since he was a kid. His looks, his grades, his popularity. That's why I was never jealous of him. Deep down, I understood something very early on. Alan and I might be brothers, but we were never equals. That was decided the moment we were born. I was quiet for a moment before responding. I know, I'll talk to him. But they didn't hang up. They rambled on about meaningless things. My stomach sank. That meant there was something else they wanted to say. Sure enough, right at the end, my father added nonchalantly, "Your health isn't good. Now that Alan is back, it's time he helped share your burden." What he really meant was, "You're the deaf one. We let you be the general manager for all these years. But now it's time to give the position back to its rightful owner. Power and love." Everything was returning to its original place. I felt like a thief who had stolen these few years from Alan. My knuckles turned white as I gripped the phone. I wanted to challenge him, to ask him, what about all the blood, sweat, and tears I've poured into this company for years? To ask my mother, "Isn't today the day you gave birth to me? Don't you remember?" But I knew. It was my father's to begin with. He could give it to whomever he wanted. And a mother has no obligation to remember the day she gave birth. I understand. I'll submit my resignation to HR tomorrow. There's no need to be so hasty. By the way, how are your ears? I heard about a new technology overseas. For the first time in my life, I cut him off, my breathing ragged. I'm handing things over to HR right now. I'm busy. I have to go. Alan's welcome home party was a grand affair. At the party, he walked right past me and smiled as he invited Calvin to open the dancing. My fingers tightened around the stem of my wine glass. The news of my divorce from Calvin hadn't been made public yet. Instantly, all eyes in the room turned to me.
Surprise, pity, morbid curiosity.
I acted as if I hadn't noticed and calmly sipped my wine. When I looked up, my eyes accidentally met Calvin's. He flinched like a startled deer and quickly looked away. Calvin was wearing a beautiful white tuxedo tonight, which complemented Alan's black suit perfectly. Their hands intertwined, their shadows merged under the lights. They looked like a happy couple. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Calvin. "Alan just got back. I couldn't just turn him down. Please don't overthink it, okay?" I stared at the screen for 10 seconds. An unspeakable fire ignited in my gut, mixing with confusion and rage, scorching my sanity. What the hell did he want? We were already divorced, weren't we? It was laughable. Calvin, like everyone else, had chosen Alan over me. But only his departure caused me such intense pain, because I had given everything I had to make him stay, and he had made me believe that this time I wouldn't be the one left behind. If you've already made your choice, why say these ambiguous things? My stomach churned. I couldn't stand the sight of this phony, glittering party for another second. I got up and left. By the time I reached the parking garage, Calvin came rushing after me, grabbing my sleeve. "What's wrong with you? If you leave so early, the media will run stories about you and your brother fighting. Mom and Dad will be angry." I gave him a look of complete indifference. "My parents getting angry, what's that got to do with you?" Calvin stared at me, stunned. It seemed like he was only just now remembering that we were divorced. "Leo, I'm just concerned about you. It was wrong of me to bring up divorce so suddenly, but my head was just a mess." I let out a dry, mirthless laugh. "Well, now my head is a mess. So could you please get the hell away from me?" Calvin froze, his eyes welling up with tears. I didn't care. I got in my car and sped off. "Why are you being so nasty? You've never been like this before. Is it just because Alan's back, and your dad is making you step down, so you're taking it out on me? If you've got a problem, take it up with them. What kind of alpha takes his anger out on me? Fine, whatever. Get lost. I never want to see you again. Calvin crouched on the grass by a flower bed, wiping away tears. He was crying and furiously typing at the same time. He was a spoiled rich kid, after all. No one had ever spoken to him like that, especially not the husband who once spoiled him with almost no limits. But no matter how many nasty things he said, no matter how many angry emojis he sent, the chat window remained a solid wall of green. Calvin tried calling, undeterred. An endless, busy signal. When the Omega had called for the 47th time, I blocked him. The world was finally quiet. I didn't really know where to go. All my luggage was still piled up in the hotel. Maybe I should start looking for an apartment. But I just didn't have the energy. I stumbled into a bar. On the dance floor, Omegas with incredible bodies writhed and swayed, frequently casting suggestive glances my way. I sank onto a sofa and ordered a few whiskeys. After delivering the drinks, the waiter didn't leave, just stood there staring at my face. I didn't say anything, just let him watch as I drank one glass after another. I don't know how much time passed, but the coffee table was soon covered in empty glasses. The waiter finally stopped standing there and slid in next to me. His lipstick-covered mouth was less than 2 inches from mine. Broken-hearted. Handsome? Want me to keep you company? His voice was soft, and his perfume was fresh and light. I was a little surprised. When I opened my mouth to speak, I realized my voice was hoarse from the alcohol. What's your name? You can just call me Sean. I nodded dazedly. Suddenly, something cool and soft touched my lips. My eyes shot open. The moment I met the boy's gaze, the sadness in his eyes was reflected in my own. What the hell do you two think you're doing? The champagne tower was knocked over. The massive crash silenced the DJ, and the entire bar went quiet. I followed the sound of the voice. A group of furious young Omegas were pointing at me. In the middle of them stood Calvin, eyes bloodshot, tears welling up. Calvin charged forward like a mad bull and yanked the boy to his feet. The next second, a red handprint appeared on Sean's face, his cheeks swelling up instantly. My head was splitting. What the hell is wrong with you? I shielded Sean, putting myself between him and the unhinged Calvin. Calvin's shimmering eyes widened, stubbornly refusing to let the tears fall. His face was a mask of grief and fury. And you have the nerve to cheat on me? You haven't been home in days. I thought you were just sad. Turns out you were with this little homewrecker. The word cheat shot through the room, and countless disdainful looks were aimed at Sean. The boy's face was pale, but his voice was clear. I'm so sorry. I didn't know this gentleman was married. I kissed him without his consent. Calvin had raised his hand to strike again, but now it hung awkwardly in midair. He was still fuming, though. Are you crazy? Don't you have your own alpha? You deserve to be hit for kissing my husband. I fought back my anger and dragged Calvin into an empty private room. I stared at him, my face expressionless. Isn't this what you wanted? Calvin, you're the one who wanted a divorce. You're the one who wanted the bond removed. I've given you everything you asked for. What are you doing now? I don't understand. The tears finally fell. Calvin choked out the words, his eyes red. My head was a mess. Alan told me he left the country back then because he found out you liked me. He said he felt sorry for you and didn't want to compete with you. But then I felt sorry for him, too. Honey, we've been together for so many years. I do love you. I just wanted to separate for a while to cool down. There's no need. I cut him off. The Omega bit his lower lip, crying his heart out. I know you're mad. I was wrong. You did nothing wrong. I respect your choice. I cut him off again. I said there's no need, as in we don't need to be separated for a while. Because we are never, ever getting back together. I'm done. Calvin froze for a second, then reached for me. I quickly took a step back. It would be a lie to say I felt nothing. After all, this was the boy I had loved with all my heart for so many years. But I didn't have the strength to get caught in another multiple-choice question between him and Alan. Calvin, let's just end it here. You're just not used to being without me yet. But I know you. You will never hesitate when it comes to choosing between me and Alan. With that, I pushed the door open and left Calvin standing there. I could still hear his sobs from far away, but all I could do now was try my best to push away the stinging pain in my own heart. On my way back to the main lounge to get my things, I saw a boy with his back to me being berated by the manager. I didn't think much of it and was about to leave, but then I saw the manager's hands start to wander. "You little bitch, didn't you see the hearing aids on that guy's ears? You'd rather sleep with a deaf guy than let me have some fun." I kicked him hard in the stomach. The manager slammed into the wall, clutching his head and glaring at me furiously. I nonchalantly held up my phone. "Get lost or I'll post what you just said online. Let's see how much fun you have in a jail cell." The manager's face turned from white to red and back again before he scurried away. I turned around and realized the boy was Sean. He looked dazed as he bowed and apologized to me. "Actually, I'm the one who should be apologizing to you. Calvin is my ex-husband. He was out of line and hurt you today, and he almost got you sexually harassed. I share some of the responsibility for that." Sean shook his head. Even if this hadn't happened, he would have found another time to come after me. I hesitated for a moment, but I had to ask, "Why did you kiss me?" Sean smiled, avoiding my eyes. "Because you looked rich. I wanted you to take me home." I was at a loss for words. Of course, I knew that was just an excuse. Maybe it was just a moment of confusion and passion. Or maybe he really was looking for a sugar daddy. But whatever the reason, maybe the alcohol had addled my brain, because I found myself smiling back at him. "But I don't have a home." "Then, do you want to come home with me?" "Leo." I froze. At a coffee shop, I ordered a hot cocoa for Sean. He told me his full name was Sean Harris. "It was a long time ago. I don't know if you even remember. You seem to have lost something really important that day. You were searching through the school's garbage disposal area. Some upperclassmen had dragged me over there to shake me down for protection money. You saved me. Your hearing aids got knocked out, but you still stood in front of me." My mind drifted back. It wasn't my stuff that was lost. Alan had thrown out a bracelet Calvin made, and Calvin was throwing a fit and refusing to go home. I had to search every trash can Alan had passed, with no luck, before ending up at the garbage area. "So that was you. What a coincidence. I heard you transferred schools right after that. Have you been doing okay all these years?" Something flashed in Sean's eyes, but he stretched his lips into a wide smile. "I've been doing great." It was late, so I called him a taxi. Just before he left, he quickly leaned in and kissed my cheek. "Leo, you're a good person. You deserve to be loved by so many people." I stood there stunned as he slipped into the cab. On the way back to the hotel, I thought, tomorrow I should go look at some apartments. In a few days, I'll find a new job. Once everything is settled, I'll treat myself to a nice meal. Calvin always called in the middle of the night. As soon as I blocked one number, he'd use another. I sighed, mentally counting up his best friends. He had to be running out of numbers soon. I just didn't expect that before he ran out of numbers, he would find the address of my new apartment. It was raining. He stood there, soaking wet, relentlessly ringing the doorbell. I never knew he had this much patience. I remembered the time he dragged me to a pottery class. Halfway through, he complained his hands were sticky, used it as an excuse to go to the bathroom, and then snuck off with a friend, leaving me there alone. Calvin was an omega with a delicate constitution. He couldn't just stand out in the rain like this. I sighed and finally opened the door. The omega bit his lower lip, his eyes red and wet from either rain or tears. "I called you so many times. I sent you so many messages. I even kept sending you $520 transfers. Why won't you answer me? Is giving me the silent treatment fun for you? I'd like to ask you the same thing. What's our relationship now? What obligation do I have to respond to you?" My tone was light, which only made Calvin's hysterics seem more unhinged. "Do you have any idea how much you're bothering me right now?" Calvin threw himself into my arms, sobbing his heart out. "You can't do this to me, you're my husband." I sighed again, my fingertips finding the spot an inch below his shoulder blade. I pressed lightly, and Calvin shuddered as if electrocuted, going limp in my arms. "The damage to your gland is irreversible. Just like our relationship. Calvin, you need to move on. I found a new job, a director position at a renewable energy company. Every day, flowers and an apology card from Calvin would arrive at my desk before I did. When I left work, the first thing I'd see was Calvin and his sports car. Hey handsome, want to grab a drink with me? Calvin smiled at me as if nothing had ever happened. But even his foundation couldn't hide the dark circles under his eyes. I still felt a flicker of pity, but I had to make a clean break. I don't want to drink with you, I don't want to go to your place, and I won't eat the takeout you order. I don't like you anymore, Calvin. Perhaps that last sentence was too cruel for him. Calvin didn't show up for several days. My work efficiency was unusually high. After work each day, I'd go grab a bite with Sean. Tonight, I finished late, so we were getting a late-night snack. After a few drinks, neither of us was entirely sober. I didn't feel comfortable with him taking a taxi home, so I called a car for him. But the moment I pushed open his front door, I was stunned. The walls were covered, from floor to ceiling, with pictures of me from college. In the library, the cafeteria, at club meetings, I didn't know how to react. My heart was racing, and I moved like a robot, stiffly placing Sean on his bed. Just as I was about to leave, I saw a school uniform draped over the back of a chair. The school crest on the upper left corner clearly printed the words, Leo Graham, grade 12, class 5. On a strange impulse, I picked up the uniform and smelled it. It was saturated with Sean's scent. My mind was a complete mess. I fled his apartment. After I got home and showered, my phone rang. I thought it was Sean, sober now and ready to explain. My heart was pounding. But when I answered, I realized it was Calvin. My voice instantly turned cold. What do you want this late at night? Wasn't I clear enough? Stop bothering me. Calvin's voice was choked with tears. Honey, I'm pregnant. The phone slipped from my hand and hit the floor. I sat on the bed, my head in my hands, just staring into space. I learned from a young age that blaming the heavens, the earth, or my parents was useless. I could only rely on myself. After marrying Calvin, I told myself the same thing. You can't force love. I would fulfill my duties as a husband, build a family, and have children. That would be good enough. Not every couple gets to be in love. But now, just as I was about to break free from one of the biggest constraints in my life, fate had decided to play another cruel joke on me. Sometimes, I really fucking hate this goddamn destiny. When I arrived at the hospital, my parents and Alan were already there. Calvin's two fathers were there as well. His biological father, a beautiful and imperious Omega, was now clutching my hand and pleading, his eyes red. Just take good care of him like you always did. There's nothing a young couple can't get through. Calvin really knows he was wrong. He cries out your name in his sleep every night. A lump in my throat. I finally understood what that phrase meant. My father placed a heavy hand on my shoulder. This is what he said. Be a man. Take responsibility like a father. And don't hold a grudge against your own Omega. I no longer knew the meaning of filial piety. I just opened my mouth and said, as I recall, you were never a very good father to me. Are you really trying to tell me how to act now? The air in the hospital corridor froze. My father's eyebrows shot up. My mother covered her mouth and looked helplessly at Alan, who simply raised an eyebrow. I couldn't be bothered with them. I walked into the hospital room to check on Calvin. His face was pale and he was clutching a doll. It was the birthday present I gave him last year. He had kicked it away at the time, calling it ugly. I have no idea which corner he dug it out of. Calvin had collapsed on his way to find me 2 days ago and was rushed to the hospital. The doctor diagnosed him as 3 months pregnant, but because the bond was gone, he hadn't shown any symptoms. And now the baby was in critical condition. Seeing me, the previously listless figure on the bed burst into tears. What took you so long? Honey, the baby almost died. It's all my fault. I'm a monster. Couldn't breathe. All I could do was hold him in silence. Calvin's tears fell on my skin. Calvin's heartbeat pulsed through the thin hospital gown and into my chest. But all I could picture was the wall in Sean's apartment, covered with images of my college days. After smoking who knows how many cigarettes downstairs from Sean's apartment, I finally saw him come down. When he saw me, the garbage bag in his hand dropped to the ground with a thud. We hadn't seen each other in weeks. He hadn't returned my texts or calls. Sean came out of the bathroom, the stubble on his chin gone. I almost wanted to laugh. Tea or something else? You set me up that day, didn't you? We spoke at the same time, sitting on his sofa. He froze for a second. I found out the owner of that bar has the last name Harris. And you were never on the staff list. A long silence followed. Sean kept his head down for a long time. When he finally looked up, the timid, lovely look was gone, replaced by a sharp, cold indifference. A sneer played on his lips. Then you must have also found out what I do for a living to get to where I am. A psycho who's been stalking you for years. A whore who's slept with 1,000 men. What are you doing here? Is your wife pregnant? So you're out looking for some fun on the side? I shook my head. First, Calvin is not my wife. Second, I'm sorry. He stiffly turned his head away. Sorry for what? I'm sorry that I didn't notice your family situation in high school, that I couldn't help you when you needed it. You're really too much of a nice guy, you know that? You had it bad enough yourself and you still had time to worry about other people. Sean wanted to keep going, to spit out more hurtful words to drive me away. After all, he knew very well that if I took one step back right now, I would be returning to a bright, warm world. But I just stood up, took off my jacket, and wrapped it around his thin frame, just like in that foul-smelling garbage area more than a decade ago. The alpha who had never been in a fight was beaten to the ground. His hearing aids stomped on. But he still used his school uniform to cover the boy's naked body. Don't be scared, I called the cops. The gaze that had watched me silently from the shadows for over a decade. I finally saw it now. Why are you so good to me? I'm just an omega who can't control his pheromones. We were lying in bed, holding each other. Sean was curled up in my arms. His voice so quiet it was almost a mumble. So you had half of your scent gland removed? I cupped his chin, forcing him to look at me. We held each other's gaze for a moment before Sean's eyes hazed over again, and he leaned in for a kiss. Leo, I want you to bond with me. I swallowed hard and pushed him away. His face went pale. Are you disgusted by me? If you are, then get out. I had no choice but to grip his shoulders. Can you please talk things out normally? I said, exasperated. I'm more eager than you are, but you need to calm down first. Once your body has recovered, you'll have your hands full. Sean's face went from white to red, and he clung to me, refusing to let go. I licked his earlobe and whispered, let's be boyfriends, you little psycho. We'll go abroad. I'll get my ears treated, and you'll have surgery to repair your gland. Then, I'll be able to hear your voice and you'll be able to smell my scent. He was so sensitive he was trembling nonstop. It felt like we were lying on top of a washing machine. After we emerged from under the covers, the first thing he did was pull me into a 5-minute-long kiss. Then, panting, he threatened me. If you dare to back out, I'll lock you up. You're really not planning on coming home? Alan was leaning against the hospital wall, speaking to me casually. I nodded. He was silent for a moment, then spoke again. Mom and Dad were really hoping for a family reunion. I finally came back, and now you're leaving. They're pretty upset about it. I just kept nodding, my voice calm. Then you can be a good son to them. I'm gonna go have some fun for a few years. I ignored him after that, focusing on the papers in my hand. This was the second time I had signed a surgical consent form for Calvin. Without a bond, this child was doomed never to be born. The procedure would minimize the physical damage of the termination on Calvin's body. For days, Calvin had cried, thrown tantrums, and gone on hunger strike. Everyone had taken turns trying to wear me down. None of it could change my mind. You said you'd be a good father. You liar. The child was gone. Calvin lay in bed like a soulless doll. My own heart was heavy, and I was in no mood to indulge his spoiled brat tantrums. Just as I was about to walk out of the room, Calvin screamed, "If you walk out that door, I'll marry Alan tomorrow." I couldn't help but laugh. Well then, allow me to be the first to wish you a happy wedding. He ran to me, his bare feet slapping against the floor, hot tears streaming down his face. He spoke one word at a time. Leo, I love you. I'm sorry for taking you for granted for all these years. But I really do love you. It's not just habit, and it's not because I want you to keep being good to me. I know you hate me. From now on, let me be the one to take care of you, to make it up to you. Please just give me one more chance. Okay? I told him with complete sincerity. You're not well and you just had a termination. You need to take care of yourself from now on. I'm about to go abroad with the person I love. I don't hate you, Calvin. But from now on, it would be best if we never see each other again. I didn't answer any of the calls from my parents. Eventually, just like Calvin, they ended up on my block list. The airport announcements were a muffled blur through my hearing aids. But I could clearly feel the warmth and pressure of Sean's hand gripping mine. He was a little nervous, but his eyes were shining with a startling brightness, with hope for the future, for the new life we were about to begin. I'll work hard to get better, he said softly, as if making a promise to both me and himself. I squeezed his hand, raised it to my lips for a kiss, and smiled. I know, but even if you don't, I'll still love you, just like you've always loved the imperfect me. Sean looked confused. What's imperfect about you? Everyone wants to steal you from me. I can't even take you out without people asking for your number. I wish you'd just weld a mask to your face, and only take it off when we're kissing. I was afraid this little mad dog might actually do that someday, so I quickly changed the subject. The line for our gate started moving, and we walked forward, hand in hand. Just as we were about to have our tickets checked, a hoarse, broken cry tore through the air behind us. Leo! Sean's body went rigid. I didn't turn around. I just gently stroked the Omega's head to soothe him. I didn't have to look to know it was Calvin. He had followed me here after all. People only realize what they've lost after it's gone. But all that turmoil, all that pain, all that late-coming enlightenment, it had nothing to do with me anymore. The plane climbed into the sky, breaking through the clouds. Outside the window was a blinding sun and an endless blue sky. I closed my eyes and felt Sean gently rest his head on my shoulder. The last 5 years felt like a long, exhausting dream. A dream filled with unrequited obsession, self-serving devotion, and a so-called love that was really just a habit. But all dreams eventually end. I am no longer the deaf man who had to constantly give and give just to get a little bit of attention and warmth. I am just Leo, an ordinary person who has decided to live for himself. I tightened my grip on the hand next to mine. The road ahead was long, but at least this time, someone was willing to walk it with me, to listen to all the insignificant echoes in my silent world.